Today, the sun is shining a little bit, but there's a lot of clouds in the sky, and it's a warm day. The temperature is high, but how can I say? Today already rained here, so it's how Fernando says sometimes we have all the four seasons in the same day. It's a warm day, but there is rain and clouds and everything.
It is interesting because here today it's the same. It is one day with, with four different seasons. So we are waiting for a rain at the moment. The clouds are gathering, and there's east wind, like combination of east wind with clouds from the west, and the waters are in the sky, just waiting to arrive the earth. This is the feeling that you have when
Yeah.
you walk. Yes, yes. So, Rodrigo, do you have any questions that you would like to ask before we start?
Oh, actually, I'm actually I just ready to follow you and to participate in our conversation with friends on Discord and on YouTube.
Thank you, thank you. So let's pop into the whiteboard. Do you see the whiteboard at the moment?
Not yet, but I try to enter in the whiteboard. It's open to me. I believe that soon I can see the whiteboard in my.
So today, what we have is another perspective, what is waiting for us. So I see you on the whiteboard already. I see your name. And tell me whenever you manage to see the text or the painting. Today we have on our horizon another perspective of Joseph in Egypt, Potiphar, Potiphar's wife, and a painting by Rembrandt. So now let's look into the text. We have one verse from Genesis 47:29. Do you see the verse at the moment?
It's open to me. I can see it right now. The chapter 47 and chapter 39.
Yes. Do you see? Can you read for us?
Yes.
Yes.
First, Genesis chapter 47, verse 29. And the time drew near that Israel must die. And he called his son Joseph, and said unto him, If now I have found favor in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank.
in Genesis chapter 39, verse
One
11.
second. One second. We are not there. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. Continue, please. Yes. Continue.
So, Genesis chapter 39, verse 11. And it came to pass on a certain day, and he went into the house to do his work. And there was none of the men of the house there with him.
Thank you so much for reading for us the text. The first verse from Genesis 47. What request does Israel ask from Joseph, his son?
Not buried in Egypt, in the land of Egypt.
Yes, this is it. And we have another verse from Genesis 39. This is in the middle of the text. There is no context here. But this verse deals with one day of Joseph in the house of Potiphar. And let's see what the Zohar say about those two verses together, how the Zohar composed two verses together and create a story. The Zohar starts, this is Zohar Bereshit, Parashat Vayechi, portion Vayechi. This is the weekly portion that usually people read in this period of the year. So this is letter 251, Resh Nun Aleph. Letter Resh Nun Aleph is 251. And then he starts with a verse. The Zohar starts with a verse. And he called his son Joseph. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak said, and all the rest of the tribes are not his sons. Please pay attention how Rabbi Yitzchak reads this verse, that Israel called his son, Joseph. Again, the relation between Israel and Joseph. So, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak said, and all the rest of the tribes are not his sons? Why did he call only to Joseph? And he answers, but Rabbi Abba said, and then he quotes another quote from Rabbi Abba, Joseph was his son more than everyone else, more of the rest of the tribes. Because we have learned in the hour that Potiphar's wife asked or urged Joseph, what is written, or what does the Torah writes? And there's a quote whenever we see a little flag here. Pay attention, the flag says there is a quote. What is written? Vayavo habaita, and he came home to do his work, and there is no man from the men of the house. This verse should have been said, there is no man at house. Ve'en ish babayit. There's no man at the house. Why does the Torah write me'anshe habayit, from the men of the house? And he answers, but to include the figure of Jacob that was there and exists there. And this is why it's written from the men of the house, to instruct that there is another man which is not from the men of the house that was there, meaning Jacob. Since Joseph carried his eyes and saw the figure of his father, his mind was settled and he returned to his former position. Do we understand this kind of reading of the text?
But I believe I believe that I can get something, but I don't know if I can get it all, the meaning of this quote.
So let's start. Let's speak. Go ahead.
No, please. I listen to you.
Good morning, Venus. Good morning. We are very happy that you're here. So we have a verse from Genesis 47. In this verse that you read, the days of Israel, or the times of Israel, drew near, and he called his son Joseph. So first of all, we see a relation between Israel and Joseph as his son. So in the Zohar, Rabbi Yitzchak asked, there are many other tribes. Why does the Torah write his son Joseph? What? The rest of the tribes are not his sons? Do we understand this question?
Yes, I understand that there is a special connection between Jacob, between Israel and Joseph, because Jacob is 7 times the tetragrammaton and Joseph is 6 times. So there is a direct connection between this. We know that there is 12 tribes and 12 sons.
Yes, this is good. Excellent. You said there are 12 tribes, but son, there's only one.
Yes.
Why? Because Joseph is included in, so to speak, in Jacob. Like you say, Jacob is 7 times 26. Jacob is 7 times 26. This is Jacob. 7 times 26. I make it a bit little that it will be seen. This is Jacob. 7 times 26. Jacob in Hebrew. Joseph. 6 times 26. So they are in a way in one lineage. All the rest, the tribes, they are, so to speak, on the sides of the tree of life. Joseph and Jacob are in the middle. So this is why the Torah defines him as a son, again, not as a tribe. And that now Rabbi Abba brings another story why Joseph was his son more the rest of the other tribes. He says, because we have learned in the time or in the hour that Potiphar's wife urged him, what does it written? As here we see in verse 11. 1 second. And he came home, vayavo habayta, and here's the Hebrew, vayavo habayta la'asot melachto, to do his job or his craft. Ve'en ish me'anshe habayit. Good morning, Felipe. We are very happy that you're here. Ve'en ish, and there is no man from the men of the house there at home. And then he asks, what is from the men of the house? And gives an answer. But to include the figure of Jacob that was there and exists there. And from this reason, the Torah writes from the men of the house to instruct us that there is no other man from the men of the house that was there, meaning Jacob. What is the story? Why it is so important to describe the day of the happening with the wife of Potiphar? What moment did she use to urge Joseph? What is the constellation? What happened there? Did she turn to Joseph when everybody was there?
So only when they are alone, just Joseph and she, the Potiphar woman.
Yes. Yes, true. She uses the moment when nobody was there at the house, only herself and Joseph, and she urged Joseph because they were alone. There were no other people around. But what happened at this moment that she urged him? What does Rabbi Abba says? What happened? The Bible says there is no man of the men of the house, of the Egyptian house, but there is another man. Who is another man which is present and the wife of Potiphar is not aware of it? Except Joseph. Jacob. Jacob is present there. It's very...
sorry
yes?
to ask you, but I believe that I missed this thing. This how can I say this connection? Why Rabbi Abba says that Jacob was there with Joseph? How can I say? There is this I don't know, this perception, this feeling came from where this commentary. I asking about the, how can I say, the foundation of this conclusion. I don't know if you understand.
Yes. You say, where does he come from? From this perception, there was another man at home except Joseph.
Yes.
Where does he come from this? So, because he speaks now, Rabbi Abba says that according to the writing of the Torah, Ve'en ish me'anshe habayit, from the people of the house, the Egyptians, the workers, there is no one. But there is another man, not from the people of the house, another presence. And the presence is of Jacob. Do we understand? What does
Yes.
it mean? What does it mean? This is interesting. And this is, I would like to go more inner to this reading, because this is an experience that people experience this, but they don't speak about it, not because of Potiphar's wife, because of a presence of another person that physically is not there, but we can feel certain presence. And this is the story. Potiphar's wife, she sees what? What does she see? What is her perspective, so to speak? What does she see?
She see Joseph.
And herself. Yes?
Yes.
So she see only two. Is that right?
Yes.
And what does Joseph notice? How many people are in this scene?
According to Rabbi Abba, there is Jacob. There is the Potiphar wives and
Yes.
Jacob also.
So,
Joseph.
and Joseph. So, according to Rabbi Abba, there are three. There's Potiphar's wife, there's Joseph, and Jacob. There's a triangle, not two. Is that right?
Yes.
So, it's a different perspective. So, Joseph, notice. Yeah, very good, Venus. Jacob or Israel. This is very good a question. Soon we should answer that. Very good, very good. It is Jacob because it's in Egypt, and this is 7 times. The value of Jacob is 7 times 26 in Egypt. So in this case, this is Jacob. It's in time and space. Very good. So, Joseph, question? Rodrigo?
No, just follow it.
Joseph noticed the presence of his father, of Jacob, and he withdrew. Because it's not a game between two, like Potiphar's wife thinks. And Gershom Sholem writes a beautiful story. He brings this Zohar in his book that Fernando once gave as a present. We put it here under books on Discord. This is the first story that Gershom Sholem brings in his book that was published in 1949, I think, in America. Potiphar's wife is simple. She sees two, herself and Joseph. She would like to have something with Joseph. But Joseph sees or notices another presence, and there is a triangle. It's not a line like the eyes can see. The eyes can see between A to B. This is what our eyes can see. It's not a straight line, but this is the meaning. She sees two, herself and Joseph. But Joseph noticed there's another presence of Jacob. So there are three. There's Potiphar's wife, there is Joseph, and there is Jacob. The order of the name in this triangle is not important, just to remember that there are three. And since there is a present, a divine presence, Joseph does not unify with Potiphar's wife. He sees his father. The sages are speaking about the letter Yod as having three sources. And Fernando was mentioning this, that man has usually three temptations: for money, for knowledge. Yes, you remember the story?
Yes.
That the letter Yod has, usually men have this. Do you remember the three that Fernando was mentioning?
Yes.
Money, this is financing. What else?
I don't know if it's power or something of
Power,
this,
knowledge, and so. Okay, This is the triangle of fire of men. That what motivates men in general. I will not write those things, but I can write. It has 1, 2, 3. There's no need to mention. But here there is a triangle, and the fact that Joseph notices the presence of his father next to him holds him back, and he doesn't approach to Potiphar's wife. He withdrawing. He is leaving everything and moves outside of the house. Because it's not a game between two. There is a triangle. There is another source. In a way, he sees his father present as a higher component. So it's not a unification between two. And he is withdrawing outside of the house. Do we understand this story?
Yes, I believe I can understand what is. I can understand the story. The story, yes.
Do you understand? Now the question, and then you don't have to answer this question because it's not about now relation between men and wives. Or this is an intimate question. Everyone in his life goes through life as life are happening to him, to her. And sometimes people are in situations. They drive their car, they're in the supermarket, all kinds of things. They're reading a book, wherever they are. They're in a situation. But sometimes when they read a book or do something else, or they water the plants at home, they feel a present. They have a memory. They remember. They have an idea. And suddenly, this two-dimensional, even when we water the plant at home, you could say there is a person, he's watering his garden. So there's the garden, and there's the man, and he's watering the garden. There are two, the man and the garden. But at the moment of watering the garden, the man notices a presence. And then it's not a dual anymore. The man against the garden. I want to make it better. I want to make it beautiful. I don't make the garden. Sometimes people go into the garden and they just fight the garden. But this is something else. Because the man who's watering the garden notices a divine presence. And he's like, there's a triangle. There's the garden, the man who waters the garden, and the divine presence of this whole creation. And this is a completely different relation. This is not a battle. Who will beat who? The garden with the wild trees, or the man with his tools? Because it's a communication. Now, let's move from the story of the garden and the man who is watering the garden. It is sometimes that we go through life, and each and every one of us has his life, what happens to him. And sometimes a person goes through life and he remembers a dream or remembers a story, and suddenly he just take another turn. And wherever he is just taking another turn. Because something inside of him is happening. He is not anymore in the two-dimensional system, in the duality, the world and me. This is how people go to the world and me. I'm going to get a book. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get a house. I'm going to get a wife, I'm going to get children. But there's something else. Did it happen to you? You don't have to answer me. You don't have to answer anyone, just inside of the heart. That you were in something in life, walking through life, and suddenly you feel a divine presence and you move and you relate to what comes as a song, as a painting, Did it happen to you? You don't have to answer me or to you. Just just a question. You don't have to answer now. Because there is another dimension. Now, I will move to another plane, to Mexico. Felipe, if I'm not mistaken, you told me once that you read the books of Carlos Castaneda. Felipe, if you hear me, please answer. I hope that you can hear me. Because this is, I would say, how shall I start to open the story of this Carlos Castaneda, and what does it has to do with what we do here? This is the question.
Hello,
Yes, Felipe? Hello,
can you hear?
Felipe? Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Yes, I mentioned once.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
In the late 60s in America, in how do you say, in California University, a student was making. Do you remember the story of the student? He was making a research. He was. Do you remember the story? A student was taking like a time with a person in Indian, like native. I don't know how to describe in good English, but he was escorting a sage, a shaman in Mexico. And California is basically west of west of west of west. There is no Western California. And in this time, he went to Mexico, and he spent time with a Mexican shaman. And the shaman tried to show him that there is another dimension of reality, not just duality as we think, but there is another dimension, in a way, the third dimension, in which we can act. This is another realm. The stories and the books, this is another thing. But it's the same principle. When we notice that there is a divine presence, something, I don't want to say magical happens, but there is in a way ability to act in another dimension. Do we understand this concept?
As the dimension of the cause.
The dimension of the
Cause. The origin. How can I say? Uh, we have the effects, but before the effects, we have something that caused that effect.
yes, yes,
Uh,
cause, yes,
yes, caused.
yes,
Yes.
yes, cause, yes. This is the story here, and this is what pulls Joseph, not to go in front, but to pull back to wisdom. Question so far. Why do we bring this story? Sometimes we, as experience life here, we experience life as a battle, me against the world. And it's not like this. It is not like this. Because if slowly we learn to recognize there is another dimension or there is another option, it's not one or zero, but there is another dimension, life look completely different. It's not a battle. It's not gain or a loss. It's something else. Question so far? Of course, in California, yes.
No, just because you mentioned this, the books of Castaneda in this room, I believe the spiritual room, the room of the cause, the things that came before the effects here in the material. And my question is um, not just as a perception, but really, how can I say, an interaction with this room, with this world that is beyond of the material. Um, my question is if this relation is just uh, a contemplation or a prayer, or there is, how can I say, another tools that we can use to assess or to interact with this room. I don't know if you understand me, but just because you mentioned the Carlos Castaneda in this room of the cause of the spiritual room, and I just thinking, and I know here in our classes we assess this, and when I was at the park with Lisiane, I can see it, I can feel it. But my question is if there is some, how can I say, some it's difficult. I'm missing the word here, but some way, maybe some path to assess or to interact with these um, rooms of the cause, this spiritual room. That is what we, I believe, I try to do more often, and so I just looking for the way or the path to assess or to interact with this world beyond the material, beyond the only the matter. I don't know if you understand me, Eti. Sorry.
Yes, yes, yes.
Try to express myself. Sorry, but uh,
I do understand. A way to access beyond the matter.
yes, this room that you mentioned, just I asking for this if there is. Um, because I didn't read the books of Castaneda, and I don't know the way that the shaman propose or shows to his disciple or something like that. But my question is, there is some exercises. There is meditations, and even Abulafia, for example, shows in his books some meditations in the letters, or another people just talking about prayers. And there is a lot of, how can I say, options, let's say, or tentatives or ways. I don't know if you
I
could
do,
say
I do.
something.
I do. I would like, but first Felipe is trying to speak here. Let's see if maybe Felipe wants to say something. Felipe, I hope that he can open his microphone. If not, slowly I will answer the question, Rodrigo. And we have a painting here by Rembrandt, Joseph and the wife of Potiphar. What do we see here? Can you describe, Venus? Would you describe? What do we see here?
Potiphar wife with his hand in the best, and I believe it's Potiphar.
On the right, this is
Yes,
Potiphar. Yes,
the hand in her shoulder,
yes,
and he has a turban or something like that
yes,
in his hand. And I
yes.
believe it's Joseph in the another side, just in looking.
How does he look, Joseph? How does his head describe Joseph?
Um,
Look at his head and the hair.
he has long hair, and his hands are together, and his head are inclined in a, how can I say, a mercy movement, something like that.
Yes. And let's now look closely at Potiphar's wife face. How does Rembrandt, he wants to communicate something. Let's look into the drawing or the painting of her, and what does Rembrandt, just a face, a facial expression. Venus, try to write what you see as an impression. Try to express What do you see in her face? As Rembrandt painted it. What do we see? First of all, her forehead and the space between the eyebrows. Is there something between her eyebrows? Do you notice something, Venus, Felipe? Do you notice something? Do you see? Do you have an exposure to the painting, or Rodrigo? Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you,
Hello.
Betty.
Yes. Hello, Felipe.
Sorry, I couldn't speak earlier.
I'm sorry.
I'm in transit, but I'm here now. I can speak, but I don't see right now the image. So just to say that I wasn't able to speak earlier.
Thank you. So here, when we look at her, yes, Venus is writing. Yes, too small on my screen, Etty. So I'll try to make it bigger. Look at her forehead between her eyebrows. There is, I'll try another color and thinner because it is too big for the moment. 1 second, I'll try this. There is like a mark. Maybe later after class you could see this painting when you have a free time. There is a mark. There is like her forehead is split into two. I will delete it again that you will be able to see. I'll try to get it closer. Do you see there's like a valley or a mark between her eyebrows? Do you see that?
Yes.
Yes. Now try to describe the nose, the relation between the eyes and the nose and her mouth, her lips, and the whole expression of the face turning to Potiphar. Try to express what is the impression.
I believe it's someone that tried to explain something. She's tried to explain. She tried to say something that are inside of her breast. Try to express something or to explain something.
Yes. Nedelia is writing. Yes.
That's the impression that I can capture from this picture.
She's trying to express something. Yes. Nedelia is saying she has a posture of entitlement. Yes. In a seductive manner. Venus is writing, you think she is a flushed? I don't understand. Okay, now I understand. Yes, embarrassed. Where does she hold her palm? Her palm. Where is her palm? Her hand. She has some kind of a necklace or two. Where does her hand focus? Why does she put her palm, so to speak, on her chest? Why?
I believe this try to find something inside of her, try to connect with something that is inside of herself.
Thank you. Another question. Does her face radiate happiness, joy, love, mercy?
I don't know, she tries, I believe that she tries justify something or communicate something, but I believe she's not so happy or he not feel joy he tried to explain something or justify something or express something that is inside of her.
Is she is angry?
I believe not yet. I don't know. I believe not. There is something here in the forehead, but I don't know. For me, this is not angry. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. She's accusing Joseph of rape. Venus is writing, Nedelia is writing in shock. In shock. Yes. And let's look at the face of Joseph. What is the facial expression of Joseph in relation to her?
I believe it's a merciful fate,
Mm-hmm.
a merciful eyes, his eyes.
So in a way we have two triangles. Yes? The triangle that Joseph sees in the moment when Potiphar is not yet in the picture. Joseph sees his father, Jacob, and he sees Potiphar's wife. And this is post-mortem. Now we have another triangle, Potiphar, Potiphar's wife, and Joseph. We have two triangles.
Eti,
Yes, yes.
it's int. Sorry, I can't speak now.
Yeah.
It's interesting that I guess in this picture there is a scene that isn't in the Bereshit, because if I'm not wrong, Joseph runs away, and then she complains to Potiphar, and there is no there isn't a moment that the three of them are uh, ex- um together in a scene, right? We hear that Joseph is accused and he's put on prison, but there isn't a conversation between the three of them. And I was just thinking that it's interesting because you brought this aspect of Jacob being present as well in this triangle. So
Mm-hmm.
just it's curious, this picture of the three persons.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a painting, and it is clear for us. Thank you, Felipe, that those are three people. But what if those are perspectives? If Potiphar is perspective and his wife is a perspective and Joseph is a perspective. What if, because the Bible is not telling us stories about people, it's not, I would say, a play on stage, Shakespeare, like ancient Shakespeare or so. It's not. What if something which is happening is completely beyond what we see here in the painting or what we think that we read in the Bible? What if this is completely something different? What if And this is what the mathematics is giving us as a reference. Potiphar in Hebrew is 385. Like Safa, language, or Shinpo, Ruach Elohim is here.
Shekinah is 385, right?
Yes, Shekhinah. Shekhinah is also 385, correct? And Joseph is 156. What happens when we add those sums together? 385, language, Safa or Shekhinah, with Joseph, 156. What happens when we add them up, those sums?
541?
Yes, 541. What is 541? The value of what?
Israel, maybe?
Israel. Yes, this is it. Israel. So what now if we read the verse, and Israel loved Joseph more than all of his sons, and he made him, what? A coat of many colors. Israel is the soul, loves Joseph more than all of his expressions, and made him a coat of many colors is a language. The coat of many colors is a language, the ability to speak. Because Israel is not, we think, okay, Jacob is Israel, there was a man, he had two names. It's about perspective. The soul is Israel. And the soul, the divine soul, gives us the opportunity to experience language as Joseph, as we are walking here in time and space. Us, as Joseph, 156, plus the language that we speak in communication, gives us the value of Israel, the soul. Now there is another thing here. In the book of Thomas Mann, Potiphar is described as a midget. A midget. How do I spell midget? Can you help me? Because this is important. Midget. Try. Can you help me to spell midget? Do you know how to spell midget? I don't want to write mistakes here. In the book of Thomas Mann, Potiphar.
I don't know. It might be MIDGET, but I'm not sure. I'll check.
M-I-D.
MIDGET, but I'll check.
Thank you, Shelton.
GET, midget.
So Potiphar in Thomas Mann is a midget, gamad, a small man, not a tall Gamad. And he is a castrated. He's not just an officer of Pharaoh, because now I move into realms, different realms of lores and legends. So he is Midget, according to the story of Thomas Mann. He's not just office. Yes, Shelton?
That's the correct spelling. Midget.
Thank you. So he's a Midget. He is not just an officer of Pharaoh, a minister of Pharaoh. He's a castrated man. Saris Paro. He's a castrated man. In a way, he doesn't have ability to act on his own. He's just a servant of the big king of Pharaoh. He's just a poodle, a midget of Pharaoh. And in this kind of perspective that Thomas Mann brings, if he's a midget, he doesn't have a will of his own. He's just a servant of a greater king. She was looking, and Gamad, please pay attention to the word Gamad, midget in Hebrew. He is a midget, and the midget, Gamad, please pay attention. Gamad, what happens when we add Yod, the potential, to those letters and we arrange them? What do we get?
Magid.
Magid. He is a midget. He is a dwarf. He is a puppet of Pharaoh. He cannot tell a story. He doesn't have the letter Yod. He doesn't have the potential. He has the letters, but he does not have a potential because he is a puppet of another, so to speak, man. This is another perspective. And she goes to Joseph that he has the Yod. He has the Yod of Yesod. And she goes, so to speak, to Joseph. That will revive life by storytelling. So, please pay attention. Joseph as a Yod, he is a high servant in the house of Potiphar, which is a midget. So Potiphar is a midget, Gamad in Hebrew, Gamad. And Joseph has the Yod of the secret, Yod of Yesod. So when we bring the Yod here, and we rearrange the letters, we have a Magid, a storyteller. Her husband, so now if we go to another realm, her husband, since he is just a mattress, he just does what Pharaoh wants. He doesn't have a spirit of its own. He's just drying her out. He's just a mattress of another king. There's no one to revive the spirit, so she turns to Joseph. He has the Yod of Yesod. He has the, so to speak, the ability to speak. And in the house of Potiphar the midget, Gamad, with the spirit of Joseph, with the sword of Yesod, there is a Magid. Do we understand this kind of reading?
I believe that I can understand that.
Yes.
Eti,
Yes. Yes, I hear you. Yes, Rodrigo.
And the beginning of the class, you mentioned Zohar and Rabbi Abba.
Yes.
And the same paragraph that you quote to us, Rabbi Abba mentioned another verse of the Torah, mentioned Genesis 48, verse 19, when Joseph feels the presence of Jacob, Rabbi Abba talk about a verse when Jacob, Israel, is blessing the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he, how can I say, he changed the both, and he say to Joseph, I know my son, I know, in Genesis 48 verse 19. And I believe that Rabbi Abba, how can I say, he quote this verse to explain uh, the fact that Jacob was there with Joseph when the Potiphar's woman attacks Joseph, let's say. And Rabbi Abba mentioned this verse from Genesis 48, verse 19. I know it, my son, I know it. In Hebrew, Yadaeti, Beni, Yadaeti, something like that. And I just try to fit because to me, the connections that the Zohar do, it's not so easy to get, to understand. So if you could say something, because in the same paragraph that you mentioned, when that Rabbi Abba explained that there is another person there with Potiphar's woman and Potiphar's wife, and Joe, there is Jacob. He justify his, he relates, because when Jacob came to bless him, the sons of Joseph, he say, I know it, my son, I know it. And this I know it, Rabbi Abba related with this moment. And I really, it's difficult to me understand this connection. I don't know if in Hebrew there is something cool or something to help to understand, because I really, the Magi that how can I say, the dots, when he connect the dots, and I can't do this. I reading the quote, I reading the paragraph, but I'm not able to see the connection. If you could help me, I appreciate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you mean that when Jacob, when Jacob was blessing the children
Yeah,
of Joseph, the moment of that he crossed his hands,
yes,
and Joseph thinks that his father is mistaken
yes,
by crossing the hands, and
yes,
so the father says to the son, I know it, I know it, I know what I'm doing, though my eyes
yes. But Rabbi Abba used this verse, used
yes.
this sentence to justify, to explain that Jacob was there in this scene that you bring to us with Potiphar's wife and Joseph. Uh, I'm not saying this. Who is saying is Rabbi Abba in the Zohar, in the same quote that you bring to us. I believe it's the other, the next phrase,
Yes,
Rabbi Abba.
the next phrase, in the next phrase of the following
Yes,
passage of the Zohar. Yes, you're right. The following passage of the Zohar, when he blesses the children, yes, the father Jacob is aware of the fact that his son Joseph has this experience. This is the question. He is aware.
yes,
Yes.
but my question is, why Rabbi Abba put this quote in this place? Because sorry to say it, but to me, how can I say, there is no connection between these two moments. I don't know if you understand me.
Maybe you can
He
send, because at the moment the people who are listening to us on YouTube, they don't see the next verse or the next paragraph of the Zohar, and maybe you have it in English also, because at the moment we don't see the text. And
Okay,
also,
sorry, I don't want to
no, it's
disturb our.
okay. It's okay. You can send it to on Discord later, and we can discuss it openly. I don't mind. I'd love it because I read it also. So this is interesting. This is interesting. Yes.
I wanted to say before you end, thank you for the lesson. I was thinking about the 541 and the five representing Shekinah or the Holy Spirit, and the 41 that the Holy Spirit is empowering, infusing the ability to experience the 4-to-1 relationship. And when you talked about the Joseph finding favor with his father because he had the full potential, that he became like an oracle, free from the censoring of time and space or of his brothers, that he was able to see beyond the group, the family that he came into, and that not only did he become an oracle or he became a majid, being able to tell the story in a way that the story became alive, but this is, I think, a really important point, that Joseph became the story. Not just he told the story, but he actually became the story, which I think is really, really powerful.
Beautiful. True. Thank you so much, Elton. Thank you so much, Felipe, Rodrigo, Venus, Nedelia. Do you have any questions before we seal the conversation today? Any idea that you would like to share? Is there something on your mind?
Just to say thank you.
Yes, yes, Felipe.
Just one question, because I couldn't hear in the moment about the presence of Jacob in this moment. I was just thinking that every time that the Torah brings Joseph and Jacob together in a phrase or in the moment, there is always the reference to Israel instead of Jacob. Like when every time Joseph is in the scene, is in the phrase, is Israel was mentioned instead of Jacob.
It is true. It is true because Joseph and Jacob together, Joseph is 6 times tetragrammaton. Jacob is 7 together. 6 plus 7 is 13 in love and unity, and there's a perspective of the whole tree and Israel and the soul. You're right. You're right.
Yes.
Yes.
So I was just thinking about this perspective when Joseph and Potiphar's wife were in the same room. Joseph felt Israel because it's like he felt connected with the tree of life, and tree of life is Israel. So
Excellent.
he wasn't alone in that moment with her.
Excellent. There was no acquaintance of tree of knowledge. It is very right. When he felt the presence of Jacob, he felt the presence of the tree of life, and as a consequence, he did not know in a biblical way the Potiphar's wife. Yes. So he remained in the mode of being. Yes, because Joseph is 6 times beings, also Jacob 7 times being, and together there are 13 times of being. Love, and he did not approach Potiphar's wife because he is being. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. I want to add to what Felipe, what you just said. It's interesting to me because the brothers, when they saw Joseph from afar, they said, "Behold, here comes the dreamer. Let us kill him and see what happens to his dream." So, in one sense, the brothers they hated Joseph because of his ability, but the father loved Joseph because of the same ability that he had.
True. This is so true. Questions or thoughts that you would like to share? Just another thing that came to me, all this is happening when Joseph is 17 years old. 17 is the value of the word good. Good, tov, is 17, and good, the Bible says about the light. The light is good, and Joseph does not approach Potiphar's wife because the light is good. This is another reading of the text. He is 17 when he has this experience.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming here today and participating in this conversation. If you have more ideas, you are most welcome to share them on Discord. I would like to wish you a beautiful year, wonderful week, and we can see each other maybe tomorrow if you have the time.
Yes,
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Eti, and shalom, shalom to our friends. Thank you, Felipe. Thank you, Shelton, and thank you, Nadalia and Venus on YouTube and our friends. Thank you very much, and shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, everyone. Shalom, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you, Eti.